In the quiet moments between questions, when the cameras kept rolling but the words stopped coming, Craig Melvin discovered something that would reshape not only his career, but the way he understood human connection itself. Silence, shared and respected, could speak louder than any carefully crafted question. And it was a lesson that took years, countless interviews, and the steady, grounding presence of his wife, Lindsay Charniak, to fully embrace. It began subtly, during an interview with the grieving father who had lost his son far too soon, when Craig, trained as he was to fill airtime and guide conversations, felt an unusual hesitation and chose instead to let the silence sit, heavy and uncomfortable at first, until the man across from him, eyes glistening, began to speak not in rehearsed phrases, but in raw, unfiltered truth. And in that moment, Craig realized that what people often needed most was not another question, but the space to find their own words, a realization that followed him home that evening, where Lindsay, long familiar with the emotional toll of storytelling, listened quietly as Craig recounted the experience. Her own career in sports journalism having taught her that the most powerful moments often happened off-script, in the pauses between plays and the unsaid emotions of athletes under pressure. And as they sat together in their living room, the hum of everyday life around them, they shared a silence of their own, comfortable, understanding, and deeply affirming, a silence that didn't demand explanation, but instead offered presence. Over time, Craig began to lean into this philosophy during his work, resisting the urge to interrupt or steer conversations too quickly, allowing interviewees to sit with their thoughts, to wrestle with their emotions, and to reveal parts of themselves that might otherwise remain hidden. And while some producers initially worried about the risks of dead air, viewers responded differently, writing letters and messages that spoke of feeling seen and heard, of recognizing their own unspoken struggles in those quiet pauses. And it wasn't long before Craig understood that silence wasn't an absence, but a bridge, a way of saying, "I'm here with you," without uttering a single word. Lindsay, ever his partner in both life and perspective, encouraged him to trust this instinct, reminding him of the countless games she had covered, where the most meaningful stories emerged not from statistics or highlights, but from the quiet resilience of players sitting on the bench, reflecting on loss or triumph. And together they developed a shared appreciation for the power of restraint, for the courage it takes to not fill every moment with noise, a lesson that resonated even more deeply as they navigated their own lives, raising children, balancing demanding careers, and finding time to simply sit together at the end of long days, sometimes talking, sometimes not, but always connected. As the years passed, Craig's interviews became known not just for their insight, but for their humanity, for the way they allowed space for vulnerability, and colleagues began to notice the subtle shift, the way he would lean forward slightly, maintain eye contact, and then simply wait, creating an environment where people felt safe enough to share their truths. And in interviews with public figures and everyday individuals alike, this approach revealed stories that might otherwise remain untold, stories of resilience, regret, hope, and healing, all emerging from the fertile ground of shared silence. At home, Craig and Lindsay often reflected on how this philosophy mirrored the rhythms of their own relationship, where understanding didn't always require words, and where the most meaningful support often came from simply being present for one another, especially during challenging times when words felt inadequate. And it was in those moments that Craig truly grasped the universality of what he had discovered, that silence, when shared with intention and empathy, becomes a powerful form of communication, one that transcends professions and resonates deeply with the human experience. For those in their later years who have lived through decades of conversation, conflict, and connection, this idea holds particular weight, a reminder that not every moment needs to be filled, that there is beauty and strength in stillness, and that sometimes the greatest gift we can offer another person is our undivided, wordless attention, a lesson Craig continues to carry with him every time he steps in front of the camera, every time he sits across from someone with a story to tell, and every time he returns home to Lindsay, where in the quiet spaces between them, he finds not emptiness, but a profound and enduring connection that speaks louder than any interview ever could.